Greetings and welcome to the Seahawks 360 podcast, a SportsEthos production, where we look at the Seahawks from every angle, every week. I'm your host, Candace Higgins.
And I'm Tino Ganasius.
And we are here to talk Hawks. It's a pleasure and a privilege as always. So let's get into it. We are going to preview the Thanksgiving game for the Seahawks. It's been one of the most anticipated games of the year. 49ers versus Seahawks, the first divisional matchup for the year, but also just the first time in years that I think the Seahawks have had a Thanksgiving game at all, which is just a big deal in and of itself. So that's pretty exciting. But it comes on the back of a loss to the Rams, a tough one on the road that I guess we'll talk about that too, and sort of how some of those themes may carry over into this week, because there were quite a few things, not just game plan wise, but also just injury wise, that I think will impact and you'll feel the impact on the next upcoming game. So, Tino, let's start with, just before we get too deep into the 49ers, we'll sort of react to the Rams game and how you think, if any ways, that may impact them for this upcoming game.
Well, I certainly think that the injuries, we talked offline before we got started here, the injuries are going to play a huge role, right? If K9 isn't available against the Niners, I don't expect the Seahawks to run the ball against the Niners anyways, but if he's not available, then Charbonnet is basically your horse.
Yeah.
Does that impact the overall score of the game? I don't necessarily know, but that injury is not a good one. DK with the toe is not a good one either. Yeah. I was disappointed, because I think part of the value of a Pete Carroll coach team and some of the things that he's always preached, especially when Russ was here, was keep the game close, right? Play good red zone defense, bend but not break, keep the game close, and we'll win, right? We have more confidence in our players and our quarterback than you do. And it was a formula that I think Pete Carroll was very confident in and very good with, right? And so watching that Rams game, I've been conditioned to just think, okay, it's close, but the Hawks play close games, right? This isn't the Miami Dolphins. And so the Hawks are going to pull this out. They know they got 4 really tough games coming up on that schedule, and then they lost. Yeah. And I, for one, was shocked, right? Because I've come to expect the Seahawks to win close games. And disappointed, to be honest with you. I think my take since we've last talked about this team has changed a bit. I think we have enough of a sample size to kind of see their true colors. And that was a win that they had to have. Yeah. They had to have it, right? Just like they had to have that first game against the Rams. There's no reason why the Rams should be beating the Seahawks.
No. Sweeping? No.
Player for player, talent for talent. Is it a coaching issue? I think that is worth asking the question. I'm not saying that Pete Carroll should go, but I do think that there are some, some adjustments that need to be made. And so, no, I was incredibly disappointed. It was my birthday. I had homies over.
Oh, no.
We made Cubanos, like we were having our beer. There were 12 people at the crib. We had 2 TVs out, one for Red Zone, one for the Hawks game. Most all Seahawks fans, and they did that. And it was like the air went out of the room. And I imagine for most Hawks fans, that's how it felt. So, I'm disappointed. I don't think that the Geno injury is going to – I know that it hurt, and I know that his arm isn't good right now, but I don't think – I do think he's going to play on Thursday. And I do think he's going to throw the ball a lot, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Well, similarly, for the most part, I think in terms of coaching, where I think it's undeniable is how penalized this team is with penalties. And some of the defensive calls, especially in the last game, I really disagreed with quite a few of them. I thought they were way too ticky-tacky, and I don't think they were being consistent on calling those same fouls on both sides of the ball, which was really frustrating to see. And it's not the first time that's happened. But those offensive fouls, they are drive killers, and they happen way too often. So it's not just that it's on one side of the ball or it's just the refs. a lot of those offensive false starts, or that's just those things that set you back. That's costly. And that is clear coaching. And I don't think any of the offensive calls have been wrong. I mean, as of late in recent memory, they're just guys screwing up. And I think I'm sure that the Seahawks are still one of the most penalized teams in the league. They were the most penalized team as of 2 weeks ago. And I don't see any evidence that would change, because it's not like the Seahawks have gotten better at penalties. You could argue in some ways that was the game. I also think it was coaching from a clock management standpoint in that last drive. And there was some talk about, so just to recap the specific instance with which I'm referring to, is they're down. DK Metcalf, he was driving down the field. DK Metcalf gets a really clutch catch to put them in the field goal range. And then the immediate next play, they seemed like they were not hustling initially. Like initially there seemed to be a slow pace, and then they realized, oh, we're in a time crunch. Let's sort of get the ball moving. And the next call was a run for Zach Charbonnet, which went maybe a yard, no more than 2. And it just lost so much time off of the clock. They really just should have spiked the ball,
right?
Bought themselves some more time. Had they spiked the ball then, I think they may have 30 seconds left at that point. That's enough time to run 2 plays, maybe even 3, to try to see if you can get yourself closer in the field goal range. And passing the ball had worked really well up until that point. So you're already in a no-huddle, quick up-tempo offense that's working against the defense, and then to just detour from that. Now, there was some explanation given. There was an issue. Gino said in the press conference that his mic went out, or he couldn't hear what the actual call was. So it's just the quickest play he could think of. That's really unfortunate that was the best play he could think of.
Gino, you got to know in that instance, if your mic goes out, you're throwing the ball, right?
Yeah.
So if I can say up until that point, like right after that Metcalf catch, I was thinking to myself, okay, they're moving slow up to the line. They're trying to conserve that timeout. You're either going to hustle to the line and call a pass play, right? Because a pass play either deep over the middle and call the timeout, or to the sideline, or spike the ball, right? It's one of those 2 things, but it's not run the ball, right? So they run the ball. I'm frustrated. I'm yelling at the TV, but then like I'm thinking to myself, what is the percentage? It was a 54, 55 yarder that it ended up being. When they ran the ball, I thought to myself, okay, maybe they're trying to get the ball at the right place between the hash marks for Jason Myers. But even then, what's the percentages on a field goal from that far? It's got to be less than 50%, typically for kickers. And so you're not giving yourself the opportunity to win. And the microphone going out, or the headset going out, is my 10-year-old daughter would know, you pass the ball in that situation, unless you think you're catching the Rams completely off guard and you expect that to be a 20-yard chunk play for a chip shot field goal. That is the only justification. And even then, it's 50-50 as to whether that's justified or not, even with the 20-yard gain, right? So I don't know. They
ran them right up the gut. It was nothing innovative about that run play at all.
It wasn't, right? It wasn't. Maybe even like if it was a draw, maybe. But yeah, I feel like it was a brain fart, like across the board. And I know that Pete that he's not the greatest clock manager. I also know that he doesn't necessarily take part. He takes part in those conversations, but he's not going to step in and say a whole heck of a lot. Yeah. But I think we have to ask the question, what was going on with Shane Waldron and what was going on with Gino in that situation? I for one, have defended Gino because I feel like he's a very intelligent quarterback, and I feel like he's very, very good at reading defenses and is an accurate passer. But would any of the upper echelon quarterbacks ever call a run on their own in that situation? Would a Patrick Mahomes, right, a Tom Brady, even an Aaron Rodgers, who I don't love, but Aaron Rodgers, any of those guys, you have never seen those guys make that mistake.
No.
Not
and it wasn't the first big mistake that he made. We didn't get to talk about the game before where he like basically takes points off of the board for lack of clock. But I guess I say that to say that this isn't his first instance of having such a big brain fart that directly impacts the outcome of a game.
You're right. And I think we can roll into the Niners game if you want. But for me, I felt like if the talent around Geno is good enough, Geno can lead you pretty far into the playoffs because he's accurate. Last year, he didn't make a lot of mistakes. He had a really high completion percentage, right? He was making good decisions. This year's Geno means we're drafting a quarterback, right? This year's Geno means you bring someone in, maybe you start him next year, and you groom a quarterback to take over in 2 years. But we're not winning with this version of Geno Smith, right? And I don't know if it's the adjustments that the other teams have made after getting enough film on him last year, or if he's tried to do too much, but he's not playing all that well. And what's interesting about this matchup with the Niners, if we can roll into it, is in my mind, the only way this team is going to beat the Niners, the only chance is if Geno Smith and those wide receivers go off. Because the Seahawks are not going to be able to run the ball against that front seven, whether Lucas is healthy or not. You look at that front seven, when I started writing down those names, Nick Bosa, Eric Armstead, Javon Hargrave, Chase Young, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, if they're going nickel and those are your front six, Seahawks aren't running the ball against them. They're just not, right? But you look at that secondary with the Niners, and you got Hufanga out, their all-pro safety who patrols the middle.
Yeah.
There might be a little bit of weakness in that secondary. If it's me and I'm Shane Waldron, I'm letting it all hang out. We're going deep. We're running play action. We're going deep. We're chucking the ball. We're looking for pass interferences. I'm saying DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are probably my two best offensive players. And we're going to see if that secondary can hold up. And we're going to let it all hang out. We're going to take risks because we know we can't run the ball. The other thing is Charbonnet's never, and I know he's a tough dude, but he's never carried the ball 20 times in the NFL in a game.
Right.
And you're going to tell me you're going to give him the ball 20 times against this Niners defense on Thanksgiving? I don't think so. I think the way to win for me, from my perspective, offensively is you got to let it all hang out. You got to just chuck it deep and hope for the best.
I'd love to see them get the running backs involved in the passing game.
Mm-hmm. I would
both McIntosh is going to play this week. Pete Carroll all but announced that he was going to play and it seems like get significant reps.
Mm-hmm.
So do you take advantage of that? That's something that the Niners are not used to you doing. That's a monkey wrench that you can throw into the game plan. Sure. And you're not going to be able to spam it. But them anticipating, making you think it's his running back going to run or catch, just sort of, you need any little advantage that you can get. Mm-hmm. And being unpredictable in that way, they need to figure out ways to be unpredictable because that's the only way they're going in this game. I do not feel confident that this is a game. I felt going into it even a week ago that they were going to match up better with the 49ers and possibly get them. But if you can't get the Rams, then there's no way you're getting the 49ers. In fact, I've just been so disappointed with the offense. The play calling has not been situationally very smart. Even if I go back and look at the film, there's something that stands out to me. It stood out to me in the moment of there was a 3rd and 5 where Drew Lock has the ball. He passes it, a deep pass. I think I want to say the DK or JSN. I can't remember which one, but it was inaccurate anyway. But like,
I apologize for defending him earlier this season on the previous podcast. I recant everything I said about Drew Lock. We can get rid of him too. We need to bring in someone else. And I think it speaks volumes that they picked up. I know they picked up Brett Rippon because he was on the Rams and they were going to pick his brain to try to understand some of the things that the Rams did offensively. Yeah. Teams do that all the time. That's an old Belichick thing to do. But I don't think Drew Lock is, A, he's certainly not the answer. And B, I don't know that he really gives you a shot as a backup. And I think we haven't seen a big sample of him, but I don't know that the talent is actually there. It's like trying to roll into a game with Zach Wilson. It's the same type of, athletic, pretty good arm, but just rattled, and you don't actually get to see the arm talent and no accuracy whatsoever when he gets on the field. So they look good in the t-shirt. They look good, at the combine, but those kind of players are not going to win in games.
Mm-mm.
It's
No.
As far as, if we get back to that Seahawks offense, I have it in my notes that Chuck and Duck for the Seahawks is the only way that they're going to win. And that's the phrase that I use and I wonder if, the Rams used to do this with Kurt Warner, where the way to offset a pass rush was not to keep in more blockers and be conservative. It was to spread out 5 wide and basically go all short game until you can neutralize that pass rush, right? And with Geno, I do think he can read defenses well enough, and he's got experienced enough wide receivers that they can figure out the hot calls against the blitz and the hot calls against pressure. And so I wonder too if, you might have 11 personnel in the game, but you might split out McIntosh or split out Charbonnet and have Fant off the line instead of on the line to try to get the ball out quickly. You said it perfectly. There has to be misdirection. They have to think, do stuff that's not according to tendency. They have to cut, like I said, let it all hang out, right? I would be happy if they threw 4 or 5 deep balls to DK and just said, DK, like, we're going to try to feed you. You're more talented than that secondary. We need you in this game. I need you to go up and get it. And with, the inexperience in that secondary with the Niners, I think that is the place to attack.
I agree with you in theory, but I don't trust the O-line against that D-line enough to go full hog with that plan. I think you could go 5 out a couple of times, but I wouldn't base the game plan around that, just because I just don't think particularly Phil Haynes has been a real eyesore to me lately whenever he's been in. And he's going to die against the 49ers. Jason Peters, who's been playing pretty well to this point, I think is going to look like an absolute trash can against the 49ers D-line. So I don't know that that's the problem, because you don't have the rush threat to even make the play action work to your advantage the same way that you need to. I'm not sure there's any one thing you can lean in particular. I agree with you in that it's almost like a kitchen sink kind of game. Like I said this before against the Baltimore Ravens, right? You got a chance. You just need to try a bunch of different stuff and see what sticks, and then stick with that in the second half. Right. Because this team knows you too well
and
for
that's
you
not
to game plan.
And unfortunately, that's not been Pete's MO, right? Yeah. Pete this is what we do. We stick with it. This is who we are. I do think if we can switch to the other side of the ball, one of the changes that I would love to see is cover a running back with a safety, right? If we're trying to cover McCaffrey with Brooks or Wagner, they're toast. Yeah. I'm sorry. McCaffrey's going for 100 yards pass or receiving at that point. But if you try to put a safety on him to try to stay with him, I don't know if it's Julian Love playing more, or if it's, I don't know if I trust Jamal against McCaffrey, but something.
He's been good in coverage, right?
He has been pretty good in coverage.
He's been good. And
visually, without the numbers, he's looked pretty good in coverage. But it's something other than Brooks and Wagner, right? It's changing the scheme ever so slightly, because to me, the other thing I would do is, I know the Hawks I have it here somewhere, have played so little man compared to other teams, right? I think. Oh,
now you on a run, man. Tino coming across on my side now.
Against this team, I do, because I think the corners, you've got Ayuk and you've got Samuel, right? Yep. And I think Witherspoon and Woolen are more talented than those two players. Okay. And I trust Quandre as, my one deep safety.
Well, okay, Samuel can get you on discipline.
Yes.
In a young Witherspoon. I think he can get you.
Yes. And I do think that there might be some busts. But if you're gambling, if it's me, if I'm like, we don't have that much of a chance, I'm playing man with one deep safety. I'm bringing Adams into the box, trying to stop that run. And I'm trying to match up somebody fast with McCaffrey out of the backfield. To me, that's the only way. If you play zone and you sit back, Brock Purdy likes that. He can pick you apart.
Yes, he can.
If you can get him off schedule, right? If you can get some the other thing I have in my notes is I want to see some run blitzes, right? I want to see some 8 and 9 man fronts where you got run blitzes and you're putting your corners on an island and you're saying, we're going to get you off schedule. We want you in 2nd and 12. Brock Purdy in 2nd and 12 is different than Brock Purdy in 2nd and 4. And so when we've seen him make some mistakes when you can get him off schedule. So again, kitchen sink on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
You want to blitz, play man defense. I'd get in, if I was a coach, I would get in the grills of Witherspoon and Woolen, and I would just say, look, this is your turn to show out. Thanksgiving, national television, we're giving you zero help, right? Yep. You might have Diggs behind you, you might not.
Right.
But you're going to be on an island all game, but we trust you. This is your time to shine. We're putting everyone up at that line. Let's go. Let's do this. If you watching Brian Flores, the coordinator for the Vikings, they're not that good, but that defense is so fun because they've got 8 and 9 guys at the line, and you don't know which guys are coming and which guys are dropping. Seahawks should do some of that, right? Yep. But they got to do something different than they've been doing. And you said it, and I'll say it now. I'm getting on that bandwagon now that Pete doesn't change that much, but he has to in this situation because the matchup just doesn't work.
Yeah, if he wants to win, then he's got to do something different. And not, we didn't really get a chance to rehash the Ravens game, but he did stick with more of the same. You were correct. Mm-hmm. He did stick with more of the same. And guess what? They got boat raced because I said it was absolutely, if you're going to play into their hands on their home field, you are absolutely going to get boat raced by that team. And that's exactly what happened. They did not run enough man covers. They didn't make them uncomfortable enough. They stuck with their plan. They stuck with what they generally stick with. They did the tour a little bit. I believe they did about 70% zone, which is better than they've done. I mean, where it's like there's some games where they're literally 90% zone or 95% zone. So they did switch it up some, but not enough to really make them think. You play right into their strength, and it showed. And so they outclassed you in every way because you're playing into their game on their turf. And so I hope that's a lesson. I doubt it's a lesson, but I would hope it would be a lesson that sometimes you really need to consider your opponent, as a coach. That's kind of important to consider your opponent and what might make them uncomfortable.
Think about this. So I have it here. Seahawks so far this season have ran 83% zone, and it says 14% man. The numbers don't match up totally, but I think the Seahawks are second most zone coverage in football so far this season. The Colts have run 84% and the Panthers have run 84%. So if you say, again, if it's me, say you flip the tendency, right? And you go 50-50 or 60-40, man, you have the corners to do it for one, clearly.
Yeah.
But the second thing is the Niners are going to spend the entire week preparing to pass against zone defenses. Right. And so if you can come at them with something completely different, you might buy yourself, a quarter or two where you're shutting them down because they don't know what's going on. Right. And again, you have the type of corners with the type of mentalities that if you challenge them and you get in their grill and you say, this is your opportunity, I do think they have the talent to really play well. One other thing that I found stunning or fascinating is the Niners haven't surrendered a 100-yard rusher in 37 games. Wow. It's been 37 games since anyone's rushed for 100 yards against them. The NFL record, I think, is 50 games by the Saints from 17 to 20. But if you think about that, you think about, the Seahawks have had statistically a good rushing offense, blocking offensive line. But this team you're not running the ball against this team.
No, they're not really very good in the run game, actually.
I think they've been decent. What I saw was decent, but
I think you're right, but I think that has a lot to do with their backups being better at run blocking, like your Jake Curhan, who is a really elite run blocker, but just so bad in protection that he can't be put on the field. Guys like Bradford, who also I think shines in the run game. So if you're playing your starters, I think you'll see different numbers. But I think you're right. I think it's balanced out to look a little bit better just because of the rotations. Even Peterson, I think, is No. Oh, he has his game.
Mhm.
He's sort of up and down with the run game in his small sample size. But yeah, I think you'll see their look even worse
Mhm.
in the run blocking if they're going to be playing their starters. And I, for one, this is a great opportunity to see
Mhm.
what Bradford can do
Yep,
because
I
Haynes
agree.
isn't going to give you anything.
I
Haynes
agree.
isn't going to give you anything. His game is supposed to be the passing game, but he's really struggled this year,
Mhm.
not just in the pass protection, but also penalties. He's one of the more penalized guys on the line at this point. And so Bradford he's raw and
Mhm.
he's going to have some bad plays, but Haynes can just get run over sometimes anyway. So if you're going to have bad plays anyway, get a guy in there that can help you run block
Right, I
because
agree.
he's not so bad in pass protection that he can't be put on the field. It's not like a Curhan situation. So if I'm there, but we're not the coach, and I'd be surprised if I saw this. But they're really trying to win. Put the guys in. Jack Charbonnet is a guy who can make something out of what you give him, but he's
Mhm.
not the back that's going to make something out of nothing. That's Kenneth
Mhm.
Walker. So you
Mhm.
don't have the guy to make something out of nothing, which means you have to give some sort of a hole
Some
for Zach
crease.
Charbonnet so he can truck a couple of guys and then get
Yep.
some yards that way.
Right. I agree. And I do think too that if Lucas is indeed healthy and he plays, I do think, that will change the complexion of the O line a bit. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah,
yeah, for
I
sure.
agree. If kind of the future, they have to start thinking about the future a little bit. I know that they're still in playoff contention, but you got 4 tough games coming.
Mm-hmm.
You got a player in Bradford who clearly is more talented than Phil Haynes is. He might be more raw,
Yeah,
but he's more talented,
and
and he might be a little more, even more run heavy. But
he's done better overall. If
he
you look at
has.
the grades, if you can, and I know PFF isn't the measure for everything, and some people disagree, but I think I actually tend to agree with offensive linemen for the most part. I think they're more consistent with grading that than other positions.
Yep.
But Bradford is the far better, like overall play. Like his grade is higher on PFF than Phil Haynes, and yet Phil
But
Haynes is still being treated as a starter for reasons that I don't really understand.
he's more talented, right? And
Yeah.
if you look at, clearly, I want them to make the playoffs. But if you look at, it's Niners, it's at Dallas, right? Next Thursday, it's at San Francisco
Mm-hmm.
10 days from then. And then it's Philly at home on the 17th of December. Realistically speaking, this team probably isn't making the playoffs, right? If we're being honest with ourselves.
I think the
Or
NFC is so bad that they can
so
make
okay,
it.
so you sneak in as a 7.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is at some point in time, you got to start getting those reps, giving those reps to some of the younger players and seeing what you have, right? If those reps, if you started Bradford for the next 4 games and he kind of could hold his own, then I have my starting guards, right?
Yeah.
And he learns from that and he's a better player next year because of it. You have to be able to balance the here and right now versus the future. And it's not as if, as you said, there's not a big difference between Bradford and Haynes. And if there is, it's on Bradford's side. Mm-hmm. So to me, it makes all the sense in the world to play him. I still, this game, it's Thanksgiving. You're with family, right? You're, as a Hawks fan, you're so excited to sit down and finally watch the Seahawks on Thanksgiving. You're used to seeing the Lions and the Packers and the Bears and
Cowboys.
I'm not going to say just don't get blown out, but I want them to play well and I want them to show up. The fans are going to be nuts, right? It's going to be cold and nasty and loud. Are we doing predictions today?
Yep.
You want to go first? You want to go first?
I can go first.
All right.
They're going to get boat race. 31-10.
Oh, come on.
31-10. 31-10 49ers. We're going to get murdered, slaughtered to the lambs. I don't see a way around it. Pete Carroll won't do anything that I ask of him. So it doesn't matter what my advice is because he's not going to listen. He never listens to me. And so, yep, he's going to stick to his coaching strategy and get absolutely boat race. It's really unfortunate because I think it could be a close game because I think both defenses can hold up both offenses well. I think they're both capable. I think the defenses match up well, but the offense has struggled so much. And I don't trust Geno healthy anymore. So I definitely don't trust him coming off of an injury. So sorry, not sorry, but Geno has lost some trust. I'm not completely out on Geno, but he's lost some trust, a lot of it. And so we're gonna get boat raced.
All right. So I think McCaffrey's going to get his yards, right? I think that sometimes they're not going to necessarily have the best matchups with McCaffrey, especially if it's against linebackers. Mm-hmm. We didn't cover this, but I am very interested in why Draymond Jones has played that outside linebacker position instead of.
You say you're interested?
Well, it's just interesting to me that they moved him there. I get it, and I think there's some good results there, but they're not confident in Hall or Taylor at all, is what it says, honestly, right? But what I was saying is,
shouldn't be.
I agree. So McCaffrey gets his yards. I do think Ayuk and Samuel, for the most part, are, I wouldn't say locked up, but I don't think they're going to have any big explosive plays. I expect the corners to play well. And I do think they have the ability to get Purdy off schedule and make some mistakes, right? I trust this defense to play well against the Niners. And I think Hufanga being out is a bigger loss than the casual fan recognizes. He was the heartbeat of that secondary. Yeah. He brought the thump, right? He was the big play guy. He was what we want Jamal Adams to be, essentially, right? That strong safety that hits everyone over the middle, that plays the run well, that can cover some tight ends. And I think him being out and a rookie stepping in for him is a huge deal. And so you couple that with JSN starting to play a lot better, starting to understand, him and Geno have a little more chemistry now. And I do think that they complete just enough deep balls to DK and to Lockett to actually loosen some stuff up. And I'm going 21-20 Seattle Seahawks on Thanksgiving night.
That is
don't look at me like that.
That's like Dreamville.
No, I am. I think everyone's gonna count them out, and that's worth something. I think that the crowd at night in the cold in Seattle is worth something. I also think that these teams play crazy games, right? People get injured. People are fighting. It's always just a rock fight between these two teams. And we've seen it when the Seahawks were better. The Niners would come in and it's close games when you didn't expect it because of that rivalry. And I think that continues on Thursday. And I think it's Seattle 21-20, shock the world. Geno does just enough with the deep ball to win. And I think that Hufanga injury is enough to soften up that secondary that the Seahawks actually can pass the ball. I'm only going to
push back on one important thing that you said earlier, and that is that if they play zone defense, that Brock Purdy is comfortable with that. That's in his rhythm, and so you're then predicting that they're going to play a lot of man.
I am, or more man than they typically do. Yeah, I think they're going to take some chances. I'm trying to will it to happen. Come on, Candace.
It hasn't worked so far. It didn't work for the Ravens game. It was And they have boat races last year, so I don't have much. I don't think willing it's gonna help me out because what they need is a coaching strategy change, and that's what we're not going to see. And that's what prevents me from being optimistic. There are things that this team can do. I agree with you to be competitive and to at least have a really good game against the 49ers. I agree with you, and I also agree with you that divisional games are weird. That's true, but it's a coaching legacy game for me. These next 4 games, and really I included the Rams game with a coaching legacy game, and he didn't pass the test for different reasons than I anticipated, but he didn't pass the test. I was talking earlier in the year about Pete Carroll and my questioning him as the future head coach of the team, not because I don't love Pete, but because there are just some flaws that I wonder if they can really get over the hump with him on. He started to show some progress in some areas and do things differently, and he still is. But my biggest thing is, can you change and adapt to make your opponent uncomfortable?
Sure.
And the willingness to make your opponent uncomfortable is very important. And the defense, isn't as bad as it was looking earlier. So I appreciate at least that. He has fielded at least an average defense. We'll find out, though, for sure, because they hadn't really been tested until now. My big thing was he needs to at least have an average defense, because you can't be a defensive head coach who can't put together a good defensive team even. So Pete Carroll legacy game on the line. If everything goes your way, then I agree they will win. But I've lost faith in Pete's ability to coach to his opponent.
That's fair. To me, part of it too is the last time the Niners saw the Seahawks, there was no Bobby Wagner, right? Who I think is
how he kills the 49ers. He does. He gives the 49ers trouble. He does.
Right? But he's I think he's fourth in football in win rate against the run.
Yeah.
Right. So you've got Wagner in the middle, and that's different. You've got against a team that is run heavy, right? A team whose offensive philosophy is predicated on running the ball.
Yes.
He also, his biggest contribution, as I've said previously, is his ability to get the defense in the right place and everyone in their spots, which is how the Niners have just gouged and gashed the Seahawks over and over again with misdirection. Yeah. Two, the Seahawks didn't have a healthy Jamal Adams last year either. And I think if Jamal Adams can stay healthy, he changes the complexion of that defense as well. And thirdly, and maybe most importantly, is the addition of Witherspoon. Yeah. Witherspoon, as we've seen at times, it makes that defense completely different, right? It makes them potentially a top 10 defense by the end of this year, right? I think they're 12th in DVOA as of right now. But those are three big-time players, and I think that keeps the Seahawks in the game, right? Yeah. I think that keeps them in the game in a little different manner than we saw last season. And again, it gets back to, is the game plan the right game plan against this ferocious pass rush, right? And can the Seahawks scheme up enough and identify quickly what's going on in that secondary with inexperienced players in the secondary enough to take advantage of it? But, obviously my prediction is coming from a Seahawks fan, but I realistically think this game is close. And I do think the Seahawks have some advantages in terms of environment, in terms of sound, in terms of weather. And I trust this defense to play really well in this game. But it's the holidays and I'm hoping for a gift. So we'll see how this goes.
A gift indeed it would be if your prediction comes true. I agree with you. Even if they lose, I just don't want to get embarrassed on national TV. But honestly, if they lose either way, I fear that they're going to try to eat turkey on our field, which would just be like traumatic for me to watch. So either way, I'm not sure how happy of a holiday it's going to be unless they win this thing. But they could sure make up last week's loss to me if they pulled out this one, most certainly. So anywho, that's all that we have the time for today. We hope everybody enjoys the holidays, time with family, enjoys watching the game, whether the Seahawks get boat raced or not. Hope they enjoy at least the time. And it is really cool to be on a stage like this, and hopefully we can play well enough to be invited back. Tino, why don't you tell people where they can find you, and we'll take us home.
For sure. So Tino Jr. 20 on Twitter, TINOJR20. I am the host of the Mariners Cast. Right now, we're doing a Monday podcast where we're talking about what's going on in the offseason, how the different moves impact the Mariners. Lots of fun. We'll be getting into 2 a week pretty soon here. And then you can find me on the couch, real full, with 3 helpings, watching that Hawks game later on tomorrow.
Great stuff. Be sure to follow the show if you're not already at Ethos Seahawks. If you're listening on YouTube, like, follow, comment. We'd love to hear your feedback and your thoughts on the game. If you're listening on iTunes, be sure to give us a review. We will shout out 5-star reviews, so please be sure to do that. And guys, that's all I got. That's all the time we have for today. We're out, and as always, go Hawks.